keep watch down the river to make sure the Germans didn't try something down there with us. So my platoon was about 1,000 yards away from the company, and I still had no lieutenant at that time. And so we were in this old German half torn up house, but there was 3 or 4 rooms and the kitchen was intact. And so we were living in there during the winter of December. The first night we were in there, we heard a moo up in the backyard. So next morning we went up there and investigated, and there was a cow up there. Well, there wasn't no cow up there the next day because it done been butchered, because we had a butcher in our platoon, and he cut the meat up, and we had steaks for breakfast, dinner, supper, and after several days, the captain and the colonel come over to where we were at one night at 10 o'clock. Said, "Sergeant Hobbs, why are y'all not coming over and getting your food at the kitchen line?" I said, "Well, Colonel, the captain come with me." And I thought they followed me with a flashlight out to a little shed. Now, this is in December, so it's good and cold. Had no trouble preserving the meat. And showed a flashlight, and I told him, I said, "Y'all cut the steaks that you want, and we'll cook them up for you." Well, I ain't going to tell you the explicits they used, because they were really shocked, and they went away happy because they had one of the most delicious steaks that they'd had in a mighty long time, and we were glad to be able to do it for them. So we jumped on across the Royal River before we crossed, about 3 days, about 2 weeks before. This fella in our company got word he lost his brother about the week before, and in the war over there in Europe. And so 3 days before we was to cross the Royal River, he told us, "I ain't going to make it across here," so I'm going to join my brother. We told him not to talk like that because he was a good soldier. True enough, he didn't make it. So there's a good thing about that Private Ryan business. That should have had taken him off the front line, because the lady only had 2 sons and she'd given them both up in the war. So we got across the Royal River and took Julick, Julick, and a day after we took it, the rest of the army was moving through us. So we left a sign outside of Julick that said, "Sorry we left this town in such a mess, but we were in a hurry." And that's in the history of the 29th Division. And you can still see it. So we went on from there to Jacarath, Germany. And about noontime, and we arrived in there just as these officers were sitting down to eat their hot lunch. Needless to say, they didn't get a hot lunch. They was taken care of, and I think our officers sat down and ate the lunch. Anyhow, I had to take 4 men and myself and set up an outpost down at the crossroads where anything could come in. And we had a bazooka, but we only had 1 bazooka shell. Those things were heavy to carry, and sometimes the guys just got to the point they couldn't carry them anymore and had to drop them off. But we did have that 1. So we set up, and all of a sudden, here comes 6 pans of tanks rumbling down the road toward out the town we'd just taken. And I said, "Sheldon, Llewellyn, that's his name." I said, "You make sure you hit that thing, because if you don't and stop it, we're mud, because they're going to see the flash from our bazooka and destroy us." So he let the shell go and stopped the tank right dead in his tracks. And the reason we know he stopped it dead in his tracks is the fact the next day the colonel come by with this swagger stick and rammed it up through there, and it went all the way through the armor. And he said, "Yep," said, "they got it." And we were all awarded the Bronze Star for that. There was 5 of us, James Hayhurst, Tom Cook, Sheldon Llewellyn, myself, and one boy, one other boy that slips my mind right now. And anyhow, the other tanks had to turn around and go back and couldn't proceed with their procedure. How much longer is it?
About 5 minutes.
Okay. I'll go on into the fact when we went to Mönchengladbach. And remember, we was fighting every day, different battles, some of them minor, some of them serious. Never know when we was going to, remember that 24/7, never know when the next shell or the next bullet's going to get you. Anyhow, we was getting a 5-day break there. And the colonel decided on the second day, we did a 25-mile hike to keep us in shape. So the night before, he got 5 of us sergeants from the different companies and put us on a Jeep and mapped out the path that we were going to take the next day for the hike. Well, the other 4 sergeants sat up there in that Jeep just having fun, carrying on. Well, I don't know whether it's intuition or whether I was smart or just lucky. But I said, hey, this is strange territory. So whenever I saw a landmark that would tell me whether to turn right at this road or what have you, I'd put it down and took notes. The other 4 didn't. The next day we set out the next morning, A company, my company led, and when we got back, we had a hot meal for us. Well, we got back on time, and we were there about 12:30. But the other 4 companies got lost because they didn't know which turns to make and what have you. And you're talking about a mad bunch of soldiers. That was a mad bunch of soldiers. So I felt pretty good about that. Not trying to give myself accolades, but I did feel pretty good because I did have sense enough to mark my directions. And then from there we went on to the Elbe River, fighting minor skirmishes here and there, and we had to sit there for 7 days to wait on the Russians. Well, while we were waiting for the Russians, because that was the international boundary line, those Germans didn't want to be taken prisoners by the Russians, and they come across that river by the droves, throwing their arms down. So we took about 70,000 prisoners on our division there on the Elbe River. And they didn't want to be a prisoner of the Russians, and I could understand, because I tell you, they were obnoxious, uncourteous, unthoughtful, rude, prude, and anything wrong you could think about it, that's the way they were. But we sat there, and then we went back to Bremen-Vegesack to be in the Army of Occupation for a while. So that basically sort of ends up the outside parts of my story, and I'm glad to be able to tell it to you. Now, a lot of you might think that all these badges is just crazy, but every one of them has a meaning to me. 9 of them are from mayors from France and the United States, and representatives of cities that have pinned them on my cap. About 7 of them are from soldiers from other outfits that pinned them on my cap. So they have a real significance to me, and I'm proud to wear them, and I'll wear them till the day I die. And I hope the good Lord gives me many more years, but I'm after 87, I done got the 7 scores, so I done 17 plus that, so I don't know what he's got in store for me, but please do as I said, say no, please, because I love every one of you. It was a pleasure to be here to stand before you. You're a nice looking group. I know you're a fine group. Study hard and make something of yourself, because you've got the whole world in your hand. It's out there for you. Please take it. If does anybody have any questions, I'll be glad to answer them the best I